And it is I again, Rasco of the Rasco and Disco Beer Review, and I find myself here at GBBF speaking to
Roger Protz.
Thank you, Roger. For those who may not be aware, what do you do in this?
What do I do in my life?
Yeah,
I write about this stuff. I've been doing it since 1976, so a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
You write famous books like that.
Yeah.
The family.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm told I've written 25 books. I haven't counted, but that's that is one of my favourites because I loved doing it.
Yeah.
And I loved the people. And I was lucky I did it before COVID, so I actually went around the country meeting all the men and women of these old family brewers.
Yeah.
And there's so much attention paid, quite rightly, to the new young craft brewers. You know them because they wear bobble hats and they all look like David Beckham, don't they? But there are these guys and dolls who've been brewing for centuries. I mean, Shepherd Neame, the first brewery in that book.
Yeah.
Shepherd Neame's been brewing since 1698.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my. That's something else.
Yeah. And there was still 30 family brewers left in the country.
Oh my.
And they need to be revered, admired, cosseted, made love to, and above all, drink their beers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember a tweet from you. You said cask beer literally is craft beer.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm not great on the term craft beer. If the business wants to do that for marketing reasons, go ahead. But I don't see much difference between it.
Well, I mean, I don't know what it means. I mean, to me, cask beer is the ultimate craft beer because unlike keg beer, which is filtered, pasteurised, served by gas pressure to keep it going, this stuff will only last for a few days before it goes off. It's like fine wine. You have to love it and look after it and make love to it in the cellar. And I mean, a brewer, male or female, that goes to work every day to make this type of beer is a real craftsman or woman.
Yeah.
And we've got to look after it because it's having a tough time. I mean, sales were down 17% before COVID. God knows what it's like now, because the thing about cask beer is it can only be sold in pubs or beer festivals.
Yeah.
You can't go to Morrison's and take it home.
No. Unless you've got a makeshift bar. Yeah. Some did in lockdown. A lot of people got up to that. Right? So what are you drinking at the moment?
I'm drinking a beer from the Ashover Brewery in Derbyshire. It's their porter.
Yeah.
And one of the many, many exciting things going on is the revival of old beer styles. And porter, and it's a stronger brother stout porter, better known as stout, was the great beer of the 18th century.
Right.
Before pale beer came along.
Yeah.
And to have that back again, I think is very exciting. Whoops.
Well, it's not a sign.
The book is drunk.
It's got 400 years worth of history, so you expect it would be.
Yeah. I mean, this beer actually created the first commercial brewing industry in the world. It was called porter because porters in London, of which there were many thousands then, because there was no transport except for things they pushed and pulled.
Right.
They would go into pubs and say, porter. So brewers gave this a different name. They called it entire butt because it came from one cask. What a terrible name. I mean, modern marketing people would say, what? Entire butt. So he got the nickname of porter. Wonderful. And as I said, stout porter was the stronger version. And we whisper this very quietly in Dublin, but stout was first brewed in London, not in Dublin. But so much was being exported to Dublin that a small brewer called Arthur Guinness thought, I'm going to do some of this. And the rest, as they say, is history, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's similar history with Baltic porter as well, because it was being shipped over to Russia, and along the way, people thought, why are we paying a fortune for this? And so in some sense, Britain at one point was the superpower of beers. Do you think it's getting close to reclaiming that title, or is it just being an influence on the world?
America really is the powerhouse now. There are 8,000 independent craft breweries there.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I mean, the first time I went to America, all you could get was Bud, or Bloody Bud. You know?
Yeah.
and now there is fantastic beer, and they're doing this sort of beer, and they've really helped to revive IPA, because IPA, like this, was a beer that disappeared and came back again.
Great book, by the way.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there are so many versions of IPA. Some of them are silly, like black IPA. I mean, IPA stands for India Pale Ale. Have to be black. Anyway. But there are imperial, doubles, chocolate, plant-based, all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's got a bit extreme.
Yeah.
Because and I'm not alone in saying this, whenever you go to a specialist beer shop, bar, whatever, it is pretty IPA dominant, and sours are kind of getting pushed out the way. And it's almost the same that some breweries, I don't think, can have a good business strategy without doing IPA. I think it's a good thing, and I see some negatives.
Well, a company very kindly sent me 6 beers which they got from small independent breweries and said, what do you think of these? Every single one was an IPA, and I thought, come on, there are other beer styles out there. And with one exception, which was Anne's Patch and Hobday's English IPA. So it was clear, and the hops were beautifully balanced with malt. All the others were American influenced beers, so they were cloudy, hazy, and all you could get was grapefruit. I don't want to drink grapefruit juice, I want to drink beer.
you made my day. I'm a big fan of that brewery. Yeah. And I live in Croydon, one of the main brewery sites is down there. And my friend who I run this with, a man named Disco, he is not a Citra fan. They'd be very, very happy to hear you say that, Roger. But dare I ask, how many times have you been to this festival, and what's your involvement with it, or what involvement in the past?
My first visit to the Canberra Beer Festival was when it was Alexandra Palace. Dear old Ali Pally. Yeah. And the champion beer of Britain was judged by me and Michael Jackson.
But not the singer or dancer, the great.
That's right. The great Michael Jackson, the beer writer, sadly died about 17 years ago now, I think. But it was very unscientific. We stood on a stage, and the punters came in, gave us a glass of the beer they liked best, and we had to taste them and say, that is the champion. It's now become very refined. There are tasting panels all around the country. Yeah. And you can have the beer of the festival, which goes forward to the beer of this festival. And it's very cleverly done, very well done. But I think my main memory of the early days, I've been to a brewery on the Isle of Wight, got back to Southampton, and the front page of the local paper showed Ali Pally burning down. 1980, it burnt to the ground. So undaunted, Canberra put marquees up in the garden at Ali Pally. Now, if you know Ali Pally, the gardens are at the bottom of a big slope. Guess what? It then rained heavily. So we said, if you come into the festival, bring your wellies.
Do it like Glastonbury.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I think Glastonbury probably learned from that.
Have you? I do know. Well, I think I know the answer to this. Is there a particularly favourite beer of all time for you at this festival, or even now? Because there is a little flyer going around. I don't see it here. you suggesting a beer. Timmy Taylor's Landlord. I remember the first time I had it. It was in 2006. In the Uxbridge Arms in Notting Hill, not Uxbridge. It's a fantastic. It's the finest example of cask, and I'm pretty sure she agrees with me.
I love Timothy Taylor Landlord because again, it's beautifully balanced. It's not one of these beers where the hops blow your head off. There are hops. They're using the finest malting barley, Golden Promise, which is mainly used by whiskey distillers, so it's got to be good. And English hops plus from Slovenia, Goldings, Styrian Goldings. And before they ferment it, the beer rests on a bed of Styrian Goldings for a few days to pick up more hop flavour and aroma. And it's just a superb beer. And a lovely story about it. Another old friend of mine who's no longer with us, called Dave Wickett. He ran a pub in Sheffield, the Kellam Island Brewery. And before that, he opened a pub called the Fat Cat, famous pub in Sheffield now. Because in those days, you had a Whitbread pub, a Whitbread brewery, and 2 Bass breweries in Sheffield, all making keg beer. So there was no decent beer to be had. So he opened the Fat Cat, and he thought, where can I get beer from? So he phoned. He was in Sheffield, South Yorkshire. He phoned Timothy Taylor, way up north in Keighley, West Yorkshire. And he said, could I have an 18-gallon cask of Landlord? I said, we don't deliver to Sheffield. So he drove in his estate car to Keighley, put this beer in the back of his car, came back. He phoned them 3 days later and said, you know that cask you said, I suppose you haven't sold it. Yes, I sold it. I want 2 more. We'll deliver. So Dave single-handedly turned it into a national brand. Now, when I go on holiday in Dorset, which I do every year, there's a pub in Swanage, the Red Lion. Go in there, pint of Landlord.
Ah, lovely.
I mean, dear old Michael Jackson, when he was asked the question, what is your favourite beer? He would say, quite rightly, it depends on the mood. Depends what you're doing, whether you're having a meal, whether you're out with friends, or whether you're on your own. So a lot depends on what you're doing. But I think Timothy Taylor Landlord and Harvey's Sussex Best Bitter are superb. And I was asked yesterday at my beer tasting, what is your all-time, if you had one more beer before you go to the great saloon bar, I said, and I'll be killed for this, it would be a Belgian beer.
Really?
Yes, it would be Westmaler Triple, brewed by monks in their monastery.
Very nice.
And it's 9.5%, so it's a good way to go. But I've been to the monastery, and thanks to friends in Belgium, I was allowed to stay overnight, which they don't usually do, because it's a Trappist monastery. You know. In the morning I got up, I left these austere Gothic buildings, walked around the corner, an Art Deco brewery built in the 1920s.
Oh man!
With a lady head brewer from Spain. And it is a symphony of, she uses both French and English barley and hops.
Yeah.
And it's, even though it's very strong, it doesn't drink strong, it just drinks like a lovely, luscious honey malt, floral hops, piney hop. Absolutely wonderful. Now, if you can't go to the monastery, which you wouldn't be allowed to do, over the road, it's on the Antwerp Road, you can't miss it. They've got the bunks have a big cafe there, so you can drink all their beers, eat good food, and watch a film of the brewing process.
That's great.
Heaven.
Oh, that does sound like heaven.
Yeah.
I used to say a long time ago, before they refurbed it, the Wenlock Arms on Saturday night when they're playing the jazz and blues. That used to be my idea of heaven. But memories.
Well, another funny story about Ali Pali.
Yeah.
I think it was 1980. No, it couldn't have been. That was the year it burnt down. 78 or 79. We had both the National Youth Jazz Orchestra and the Ronnie Scott Orchestra performing. On the Saturday night, Ronnie Scott, you can imagine the crowds that were there. And the National Youth Jazz Orchestra made an album called In Camera, dedicated to the campaign. And each track was sponsored by a family brewer. And for Young's in Wandsworth, they took that famous Sinatra, Nelson Riddle, You Make Me Feel So Young track, and they turned it round and they called it Young's Makes Me Feel You So. They wouldn't be allowed to do that.
No. Oh boy. Roger, thank you very much for speaking to me. Just to give my friend John from Lord's Brewco, I am drinking Putin, your Unsinkable Muscat. Please give it a go if you haven't already. And thank you very much.
Support Ukraine, please. Yeah.
Slava Ukraine.
Kaiveria Ukraina. Yeah.
That too. Thank you. And you got anything? Are you going to be getting another book out, or is that top secret?
Yeah, I've got a book coming out in September called The Canterbury Ales.
Yeah?
I followed the route of the Pilgrims down from Southwark to Canterbury.
Yeah.
And also the Pilgrims Way from Winchester to Canterbury. going to pubs, breweries, old and new. Great time.
Yeah. I thoroughly look forward to it, Roger.
Right.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Cheers.